one of the first things to consider, other than the exposure of the window and the opening, is how you're going to detail the water-resistant barrier and the water-shedding surface. You want two planes of protection throughout your assembly. So there's different schools of thought. I like the concept of a double head flashing. You have one flashing just above the opening that's approximately 1 inch wider than the opening on each side. Obviously you want end-dams on your flashing. The depth of the flashing would depend on, again, your trim detail, which would depend on the thickness of your siding and whether or not you're going to go with that pocket detail I described earlier. The elevation of the flashing would depend on whether or not this was an operable window or is a fixed pane like this one. Obviously, if it's an operable window, you want this up high enough so that it's not going to interfere with the window operation. And if you have multiple windows that are a mixture of operable and fixed, obviously you're going to want them to look consistent. So you pick the worst case and you design accordingly. So I'm going to go ahead and figure out, in this case I don't have an operable window, so I'm not going to worry about the elevation. I'm just going to make sure that it looks somewhat presentable. The details of putting on the flashing, you have your R-Guard Cat 5 backing. You would put a layer of fast flash in. You would put this in while the fast flash is wet, and then you would put another layer of fast flash on top. So that's what we're going to do now. Just one more thing I should say. The bottom head flashing is a through cavity flashing. It's going to go right up against the sheathing. The top flashing will stick on top of the furring strips and be that second plane, and it will basically be protecting the trim boards from surface water, which extends their life considerably. They're a fairly high maintenance item, so whatever you're going to do to extend their lifespan without a large amount of maintenance is a good thing. So I'm going to mount this temporarily just so that I can figure out the side jamb trim details. I've attached a piece of 1x2 to the jamb to simulate the trim return. Obviously it would be proud of that, and it'd be a lot larger of a piece, but that's just to give the exposure this way. You want to obviously have a trim board for the sides long enough. I've already measured this out. It's actually borrowed from the BCIT project that the window was borrowed from, so I know it's the right size. I made it. You want to notch out the side trim board so that it fits around the end down that extends past the head. And the reason you want to notch it out as opposed to, say, cutting it underneath is your top trim is going to sit on top of the end downs. By notching out the side trim, you end up with a nice, clean, continuous trim around the window. Otherwise, you'd end up with this gap that you then have to somehow try to detail. So by notching this out to the height of the dam, you end up with a really nice, clean detail there. As far as the depth of the notch this way, that's what we're trying to line up with our simulated return board. So I'm going to go for a look that has the trim board extending past the return, so that I have a nice hidden return and a nice clean effect. And that's how I'm detailing this. So I should also say that when you're installing your strapping, you want to retain the capillary break around all of your penetrations. So you should never install your strapping flush up against with an opening. You should always set your strapping back from that opening 3/8 of an inch minimum, half an inch is fine as well. And so by doing so, you provide that drainage plane, which is the second purpose of the capillary break. Normally you would plumb up all of your strapping. Because I'm actually building this mock-up on a trailer, which is just on a gravel, uneven driveway, there's nothing level about this, so I'm just ensuring that my exposure and my distance between components are equal. If this was then put on a level surface, that would then end up being plumb and square and straight.